Hi friends, Chris here. Hey, I appreciate you being followers of mine, and the reason you're receiving this particular email and video is that you recently clicked on a link that was titled The Hidden Cost of a Lack of Trust. And in that you kind of heard a story of how we've recently moved, and I no longer have my typical office furniture and have a particular chair that I've lost trust in. So as of today, you'll see that I'm actually, you can't tell it, but I'm actually sitting in a different chair and have a much higher level of trust. But yeah, that was just kind of a funny story to get into a topic that is all centered around what I find in working with leaders and their teams, and that is an absence of trust. And if you follow an author by the name of Patrick Lencioni, he has a great book out by the name of 5 Dysfunctions of the Team. And what Patrick says in that book, and I truly find as well and believe, is that foundationally, one of the biggest issues that most teams, as well as relationships in general, are challenged with is this whole absence of trust in their relationship. So, as I mentioned also in that blog post, my traditional model for working with teams is a process we call team alignment. And what I've uncovered is that I've got a lot of demand and desire for people of maybe smaller organizations or smaller teams to have me come in and work with organizations. However, in the past, primarily because of either one thing, my availability, or candidly cost, it's been a little bit prohibitive. So what I've started to do, and as I mentioned, I piloted with a few clients so far, is a model that streamlines my typical process. So you might look at this as a good, better, and best model. Historically, I've had a best model, which I would come into an organization, normally spend a minimum of 2 to 3 months in that organization, and key components of that would be is really just coming in on the front end and getting to know your team, your organization. We'd probably do a little bit of things. Sometimes I do disc profiling to just start to interact from a personality profiling aspect of things, help people understand each other, as well as myself get to know the team a little bit. And then, pretty quickly, in month 2, we would start a process of team alignment where I would do a team assessment, and that's a one-on-one interview with each of the team members where we collect information and then we depersonalize that information, and that document is used to get into the room for a off-site meeting. And during that off-site meeting is where we start to break down barriers within the team that normally fall in a couple areas. I mean, most clients would tell you that the primary feedback that they receive from my coming in and working with their organizations, and in particular the offsite, is that one, you really got us to open up and talk and have some of the difficult conversations we should have been having a long time ago. And then the second is you got us focused on vision and all pulling together on the same rope. So that is the outcome. And then on the back end of that offsite, I typically would stay engaged with the team for a few more weeks just to continue to make sure things are headed in the same direction. And for some clients, I've even contract on to continue to stay with teams. I've had teams that I've stayed with for up to, I believe 18 months is probably one of the longest clients that I've had. And even in that particular client, I recall the CFO of the client said, Chris, you're worth every penny that we've spent with you. And that's a client that was more than a $100,000 client. So, the process, that speaks to the value of the process. But again, because of that, I've also been, really looking at what does it look like to streamline this process. So what I've uncovered in working with clients more recently is that there's a potential we can provide 80% of the value, yet substantially streamline the process. And what that looks like is the good and better model, more so. The better model versus the best model is really getting in and just maybe within the course of 2 to 3 days, my interacting with the team, and the primary components of that are really going and jumping straight into that team assessment. It's a depersonalized assessment where I'm asking questions like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your clarity of the business goals? With respect to priority and focus on the team. And then the next question might be something along the lines of what's the effectiveness of the team in achieving those business goals on a scale of 1 to 10. And then if it's not a 10, what does it take to get to a 10? And then we'll go through questions like what would you kind of define the leadership style here within your organization. What would you like to see that look differently within a year or two? Or also from that, roles and responsibilities. How clear are you on your role? How clear are you on other people's roles? If you were the boss, what would you change? And as you can kind of get a context in listening to the questions as I'm kind of rambling them off pretty quickly, you can appreciate the fact that generally speaking, I get some great insight into an organization and that particular team, and feedback that is crucial to that team. And that all that information is collected into one document that is a summary document, and it's depersonalized and then is presented to the team. Now again, in the better model, what's best in the better model is that we do still schedule a time off-site. So again, this would be a day to collect the information, a day for off-site. And then that off-site, I go through the same model that I traditionally would in the best model for that day. And generally speaking, the outcomes of that day are an elevation of trust, candor, openness, transparency within the team, and then 2 or 3 key initiatives that we're walking away from that we're really truly focused on. And that doesn't even count some of the low-hanging fruit that we just wiped off the table that particular day and got passed. So again, in that model, we're talking about a couple days of my time. It is still face-to-face. And so, we're talking a few $1,000s and not a few $100 type situation for, these small organizations that would still love to have me engage for a brief period of time. So to that point, on the lower level, what I've also started, and this is one that I'm still trying to prove out, is there a way to virtually conduct a assessment process up front just to get the health of the team. And, again, I'm finding there's a tremendous amount of value in the one-on-ones and being able to have that dialogue. So, I am trying to collect information on the assessments via a online survey, and I'm still on the fence as to the true value of that, whether or not I could commit to being 80% of the value or not. But the bottom line is that there is tremendous value in getting feedback from your team in somewhat of an assessment that you and I can debrief. And so, if we're looking at me being able to put in your hands an assessment that the team can provide feedback on, that is depersonalized to me, a third party, and create some type of summary document for you, and then have a one-on-one debrief primarily with yourself and I, maybe a virtual debrief with your team. Then that assessment, that process starts to get much more reasonable as far as my time commitment, which and hence gets into the value proposition and the expense associated with that. I firmly believe that the value is there in all of these processes, but in a realistic standpoint, ultimately we know that some organizations, I just had an opportunity to work with an organization a couple weeks ago that was only a few $100,000 in revenue. And clearly they're not going to be able to invest $100,000 like the other client that I talked about to go through a process and have me in a relationship with your team. So again, I just kind of wanted to summarize all this. I apologize for being a little bit long-winded, but hopefully it gives you a better perception of where I'm headed and some of the things that we're piloting here and really seeing some pretty good success with. And I would love to have an opportunity to talk with you directly about how we might tailor one of these particular models to you, and recognizing that even if we start at some of the base levels of the good or better model, we still could transition into that next step higher in some form or fashion. So appreciate all of you, and I promise not to flood your inbox. This probably will be the only video email you get on this topic as a follow-up. So thanks, and have a great day.